And so I think, what would be good before we, get to questions is to ask each one of these panelists about what drew them specifically to the part-time program and, essentially what the experience has been like so far. I think that's a nice open-ended question to start with. Lisa, do you want to start with that?
I was attracted to the part-time program because I have to work, that it really was no option, that I knew that if I wanted to go to school, it would have to be someplace that had both. And when I did the research on schools in New York City, I was actually surprised that Columbia was the one that had the part-time program. So when it was time to apply, it was really easy because I only had one place to apply to. And what was the other part? I was supposed to tell y'all?
Your experience.
My experience. I really didn't have a journalism background at all, so I think I really struggled in the reporting class, like things like places where to go to get research, different databases. That was a big struggle. I spent a lot of time contacting the library, getting to know the librarian. There's a section of the journalism website, I think it was like getting to know your beat. I sort of spent a lot of time learning how to navigate those areas because that was probably what was the most intimidating. And I ended up saving all those vacation days that Elena kind of tells you to save up. I ended up using those in my reporting class. I was just so nervous and stressed. I would take the day off before my article was due, and if I had to do any last minute research, I would kind of go out and do it then, or then go find sources and kind of just fix my stories. And I guess so far, so good. I think the only downside I would say about being in the part-time program is you don't get a chance to go to everything. You know your time is limited, so you really have to pick and choose what you want to go to, where you can sort of take days off or where you can sneak out to go to an event. But otherwise, it's a wonderful experience, and I would recommend it to everyone.
Excuse me, an event here at school or?
Well, sometimes I'll have like guest speakers in the evening, and I may or may not be able to make it depending on what my work schedule is, or if there's something in the morning, it's okay, I've got to probably call in and let my supervisor know I'm going to be in a little bit late, but you don't want to be the one to do it all the time, so you almost have to pick and choose when you're going to take those moments.
Hi guys, I'm Jenny. I'm also a part-time student here, finishing my first year. I chose the part-time program because I'm an AP at CNN, so I wasn't leaving that for anything. And my experience so far, it's a huge lesson in how to manage your time. It's really cool because your professors all like, I went to law school before this, and there were some people that were teaching it that had never practiced law before in their life, and it's like, how is that happening? But everybody here has done something in journalism, which is really interesting. I have a broadcast background, but I'm being taught by people that do radio and people that do print, and it's a different way to look at the news completely when you're exposed to that many different types of media. Just to echo what Lisa said, the experience has been amazing, especially for me because I get to straddle the line between school and work. So anything that I'm learning here that I'm like, oh, it's the craziest thing I've ever heard, I can take it to work and be like, no, it's actually real. That's how life is, kind of thing. Or, it just opens a door to talk to more interesting people. I recommend it to everybody.
I'm Megan. I am graduating in like a month, and I'm very excited. My experience was actually different from these two and from what yours will be because when I started, we had RW1, which is like a crazy boot camp in the beginning of your, it takes place over the whole summer. Took place over the whole summer, and we chose specializations, and mine was magazine. Which they did away with. So I have found it very beneficial to always, if you're planning to work full time, you should have a dialogue with your employer about your school and the commitments that you're going to have because it was beneficial for me that I found out about my current job, got my current job the same day that I found out that I got into Columbia. So right off the bat, they knew that I was attending the school. And the reason I chose the school, it was really either Columbia or nothing. I didn't really want to go anywhere else. And the part-time program in particular, because I was working and it just wouldn't have been an option for me. I had been working 6 years after college at that point, and it wouldn't have been an option for me to quit my job and do the full-time program, which people have done. But so it was beneficial for me to try to do both. And like you mentioned, it's a very great exercise in time management. There will definitely be times where you're crazy overwhelmed, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that it definitely pulled me out of my comfort zone. I had 0 journalism experience, 0 reporting experience, and now I was when I started, I was, walking up to people and asking them things and tweeting strangers for sources and that kind of stuff that if you've never done journalism before is crazy to you, but it will make you a better journalist. And I think that all the professors here are incredibly supportive. They're always available, and my experience has been very positive the entire time. I mean, I'm graduating soon, and as much as I can't wait to graduate and not have anything to do after work, I'm gonna miss it a lot. I think I'm gonna be nostalgic for these days, and if you guys do choose it, I imagine that you'll feel the same way.
Whatever you learn here, has it improved your career somehow? Like for all of you?
For me, it was, I write the stories on my company's website now. They just tell you, oh, you're a journalist, you write the stories. So I find I'm doing a lot of those assignments, and I ended up doing the social media, so now I'm also the Facebook lady, the Twitter lady as well. And then even when, as part of what I do is fundraising, when I'm working on grants, that when it's finding the stats and the numbers, actually, it's easier for me to go out and find the numbers now, or if it's not clear, I'm a lot more comfortable even just calling the public information officer, or even just looking to get more details on the numbers. So it's helped me that way.
For me, it's helped me to think outside the box. Before, it was very much, I had a very one way of thinking, like, this is my plan, this is how I'm gonna attack it. And if it didn't work, I would just stress out about why it wasn't working. So being in school and being exposed to all of these people that have all these different backgrounds in journalism, and not any background in journalism attacking a story, just gives you a different perspective. Several times from work, I've texted a mass amount of people from class to be like, if you had to tackle this story, how would you do it? And got a lot of ideas that way. Especially in the part-time program, a lot of your classmates are people that are experts in finance and done all of these other incredible things that I don't know anything about finance. So there's one student that I always bother him about all sorts of finance questions, and he's always welcome to. He's very open to it. So that has definitely helped me out. And like you said, when you start out, you just want to get the assignment done, so you run out and talk to whoever you need to talk to. I've learned to sit down for a second and think about the assignment, think about what I'm trying to get, what's the story, what kind of quote do I want, and it kind of frames your questions a little better, so that instead of asking 30 questions to get that one answer, you can streamline it to 5 or 6.
I found that it's helped me a lot in my writing from different perspectives and changing my tone depending on where this is going to be published. I work for a medical school in their development department, and I do a lot of writing for their publications, and I frequently have to switch gears and change tones at the drop of a hat. And even just being in this school that's very strictly AP style for the most part, and you have a lot of journalistic standards that you have to follow, whereas in my job there's a lot of gray area in terms of what is acceptable to go to print. And I found that I can manage myself much better having to switch gears like that frequently. So
you find the part-time program, I know you don't have jobs, do you find, if you didn't have a job, do you find the part-time program to be time demanding? The 10-month program is very time demanding with this fall. This entire graduate program is in 10 months. Those are spread out over 2 years. So is it as time demanding? Or is it time demanding period?
period, but even if you didn't have a job?
Yes.
Absolutely. I think that there were definitely times, there are absolutely times when I would have done more on a project had I had the time. And when you're working from 9 to 5, you just have limitations that are, it's just a given. So despite the fact that it's spread out a little more, that's the thing. The thing about a lot of the work that we're doing is you can always take it 1 or 2 or 3 steps further. And so it's kind of what you make of it. And but that being said, it doesn't have to be totally crazy overwhelming every second of every day. I mean, if you can manage your time, you can figure out a way to do it without going insane, in my opinion. I mean, you'll be stressed, but
Thank you.
It's a good kind of stress. It's a good kind of stress.
yeah, you feel productive.
Professors you don't get a free pass just because you're a part-timer.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a little bit of understanding if you have to travel for work or something
Sometimes
like
you
that.
have to remind them because you might be outnumbered by full-time students.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. The class that I'm taking right now, I'm the only part-timer, and my professor's been very understanding when I've had to travel, but otherwise the workload is the workload. But you get a lot of time you get the assignments way ahead of time, so you can plan out what I need to do and how I need to do it. The readings for this class in particular, you get 4 days to do it. It's a lot of reading. When you print it out and you look at it, you're just like, wow. But like Megan said, it's all about time management, which is like real life. If you're going to be a journalist, right now I'm working on 4 stories, and not all 4 stories at work, they're not on the same timeline. So if somebody calls you and says, we got the ungettable Get interview, you can't be like, oh, well, I have to go to class and I need to sleep sometime and Manny Petty would be nice. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? You have to figure it out. But I mean, I think with a lot of the classmates that I've had and with myself, I just think that it's not that life altering to learn how to manage your time. So it's a whole chunk of work, but I don't think it's gonna kill you.
No, you really have to work with what you have. There are some stories you honestly just cannot put the time into. It's always the juggling act of, I have a job, I have another commitment, I have this commitment, and this can't be number one all the time.
Right.
Sometimes this is gonna suffer because you have a job to get done, and you'll just work with the time frame that you have, and you just learn that, you take making it work to heart, because sometimes you really have to.
And sometimes that can be good. You learn to, like she said, work with what you got. So instead of a 45-minute interview, if you can only sneak in 15 minutes, you're going to ask those important questions versus, so.
Or what I've done is sometimes I'll even go to work an hour earlier, because sometimes I would find, especially in the reporting class, that an hour doesn't always equal 60 minutes if you're in the J school. Sometimes you need a 90-minute lunch because you've got stuff to get done. So I always just made sure I was at work earlier, or I stayed later where I could. This way there was never the feedback of, you're not getting your job done, we don't see you, you're always out. It's, I'm here getting it done. You're going to find sometimes you are going to be working on weekends, even just to sort of stay ahead. You'll end up, at least I do, I end up going in on Saturdays, or sometimes I'll go in on a Sunday because I just need to stay current. It's always the idea of, you don't want your colleagues to go, oh, okay, they're in journalism school, she's going to be there 2 years, oh, I can't take it. You still want them to support you and invest in your projects. So I was going to say, even at work, like when I was planning on applying, what I did is I would volunteer for the projects nobody wanted to do and kind of like build up that goodwill. This way, when there were moments I really couldn't do extra work, it was, wait a minute, I've got this history of when I did this, when I did that, so at least people don't feel like you're infringing on their work time because you have an outside commitment. So I would just do things like that.
Piggyback on my question, how do you, any tips for negotiating for a lawyer who is nowhere related to journalism? Because I'm already nervous that because I've taken time for this, they're going to think, well, I'm going to be leaving him soon, or she's taking too much more time, or maybe we should get somebody else to do my position because it's sort of like I have a fixed time job, where it's the same thing over and over again. So I want to make sure that my employer doesn't think I'm going to run out and all of a sudden or something, I'm not going to show up at all. So how do you negotiate that?
I think, I mean, I don't know what your relationship is with them, but I don't have, like I said, I had a different situation because I started my current job when I started school, and I actually was able to work with them to get 1 day off a week during RW1, which is unusual. if you want to try for it, you should try for it. But they were incredibly understanding. But there's writing in this job, so it's a little more related. So that being said, I'm not an expert on your situation, but I would say, just as someone who's been working a while, if I would just take a meeting with your boss and just sit down and say exactly what you just said. Like, I'm not going to be leaving, I'm not going to be running off and prioritizing. I just want you to know I'm going to do this program, but I'm still here, and that would be my advice to you. I don't know. Your face looks doubtful. Like,
Yeah, no, it is.
Are you new to the job, or has the?
I've been here for about a year and change, and the problem is, I'm the only person in my position, so I rely on other people to back me up. So if something has to happen where I have to be away from the office, I would trust that somebody's gonna help me out because I'm here.
Well, a way around that is to make sure that you're not out of the office often. You know what I mean? Plan your J school life around your job as your job being a priority. That's another thing you learn, how to prioritize. There are some times where you need to take a break, or get that mani-pedi. But if you make them feel, and that's the same with my job. My boss told me straight up, like, this is your priority when you're here. When you're not here, I don't care what you're doing. But when you're here, I need you to be 110%. And I think if you go above and beyond at work, people are a little bit more understanding when you do have to.
do you have typical 9 to 5 hours?
It's 9 to 5 hours. I'm a receptionist basically, so I have to always be on the phone.
Okay.
There in front of the desk where all the time. The thing is, I can already see issues with, like, I have classrooms that are assigned to do. I already can see that there's going to be problems in getting stuff done because of what they do.
Well, I had that concern. I'm sorry. I had that concern. So what I did is I made sure I took the reporting class on a Saturday. There was one on a Wednesday. There was one on a Saturday. So I opted for the Saturday one, because at the time I had gotten a new supervisor, so I didn't want her to think I really wasn't doing the work. So this way I just did everything Saturdays, Sundays. Just know if you go that route, you will not have a summer. You're pretty much going to be in class all day Saturday. It's from 10 to 4. And you're pretty much going to be running and scrambling to do all your work Saturdays and Sundays, and then your evenings, during the week, you'll be doing this stuff. So either option, you just have to decide which way you almost want your pain, because I think if you do it at, was it Wednesday class? It was like an afternoon block or the Saturday block. Just decide which one may work better for your schedule and kind of go from there. The advantage is if you take a class on Wednesdays, you've got Saturdays and Sundays to do your reporting, and there's so much going on in the city that you've already got a lot of stories.
Yes, it sounds like there are a lot of field work, right? It's like the sensory time we get together one day, and then.
Yeah, you're not sitting at a computer reporting the entire
No,
time.
you got it.
Absolutely not.
You go.
You grab your tennis shoes, your camera, and you run.
Yeah.
Can you give examples of the stories you report on for the reporting class itself?
They gave us a geographical area, and you had to find stories in the area. So I guess all of us, we spent time at community board meetings, kind of getting to know what's going on in the neighborhoods, getting to know the people, whether it's someone who's on the planning committee council or this council. We learned how to access the AP day book, so there were stories there you could cover. We got on mailing lists for events around the city. I think Bryant, the Saturday class, I don't know, is it Karen Stabiner still?
I don't think so. Not upcoming, no.
That I guess if you know where your area is, you can get on mailing lists for the areas. They can tell you about events going on, so at least it'll help you find a story. The story I think that I love the most is actually one that was unplanned, and Jenny ended up helping me on, was when they had the verdict in the George Zimmerman case. And at the time I was struggling with the topic, and when they announced the verdict at 9 o'clock at night, I basically just I was glad it was dark outside. I just threw on some clothes, some sneakers, and just ran down to Times Square and just started getting quotes from people. So sometimes you plan, and something breaks in the news, and you've already got your story.
I was covering a beat on the youth in Midtown. So I went to a lot of school dances. I did a lot of hanging out with young people at.
So you choose basically, no?
Yeah, but you have to.
choose your topic. So
You choose a topic, you have to defend it.
Nightlife in New York City, maybe.
Yeah, but you have to defend it. You have to defend it. You have to get it approved by a professor, but you have to defend why it's, why you can cover it for a whole summer and get a lot of stories.
I don't know if it depends, is it the same as RW1 where each professor had their own guidelines for beats? Because my
Yes,
experience.
and you know, it, this year, the summer class will be taught by Sam Friedman. Is that, any of you have Sam?
I
Okay.
covered.
And he usually has a geographic beat, and then the Saturday section will be taught by Mike Hoyt, Hoyt. And I don't know what he's gonna plan. Sometimes about reporting professors have chosen to do thematic, you know, courses where they'll be covering food or politics or religion or ethnic cultures, and they choose, you know, those beats according to, you know, different ethnic cultures or, you know, the business side of food, that kind of thing. And so all I can tell you at this point is that whatever it is that the structure of the class will be built around, there will be some wiggle room for you to, you know, to shape it yourself, you know? It won't just be someone saying, you have to cover Brooklyn and that's it, I don't want to hear it. They know who they're working with here, and they know they have to have a little bit of flexibility in there. Speaking of which, don't pick these up yet, but these are the schedules for each of these two sections. This is for the Saturday section, and this is for the Wednesday section. And when you leave, I really want you to pick one. If you haven't yet decided which section you want, take one of each of these, and it will tell you exactly when you'll be in class. Please take note that the Wednesday, during the digital media first 4 weeks, you'll actually be coming on Wednesdays from 12 to 7, and then the latter 10 weeks from 2 to 7 on Wednesdays. This is so that we can get in as much time as possible in the digital media training portion of the class. If you have any questions about that, I can answer them.
I know you spoke about earlier about RW1 not being RW1 anymore.
Yes.
Is magazine writing still a part of that, or how is it a course at all?
Oh yeah, there's a magazine ranking. You mean concentrations? In other words, you no longer say whether you're broadcast or print or, you know, newspaper, magazine. But we still have many of the same courses. There's a magazine. There's, I think, more than one magazine reporting class offered in the spring semester. And then there are writing modules that I think are very much geared towards helping you, you know, develop many of the skills you need for reporting in magazines. You know, I was talking earlier with another student about Kevin Coyne's narrative writing class and even his 800-word class. It's a class that's meant to teach you how to write short, but really it teaches you how to write well, period. And that's sort of a very great foundational class for any of the seminar and production classes you will take in the spring, which include magazine reporting, include video, include subject areas, as I was describing on the dais earlier, such as business reporting, education reporting, religion writing, and so on. So, you know, we're really not limited now that we don't have concentrations. In fact, it's really the reverse, meaning you're no longer only able to take a certain class. You know, Megan was restricted to certain classes as a magazine concentrator. Now, you're really able to choose from a variety of classes, and as long as you, in certain instances, have taken a prerequisite. Magazine doesn't have one. But some of our video classes and radio classes and digital classes do require that you take a class in this fall to be able to do it. It's wide open to you.
So we are eligible as part-time students for any of the same courses either that happen during the day or the rest of the full-time program?
Yeah,
Okay.
it just depends on your schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as you can make it.
The only classes you're taking, you know, by yourselves as part-time students is the reporting class in the summer, your master's project the following summer, that law and critical issues class, which you take at 9, the second fall that you're with us. But as I said earlier, you can also opt to take that on Fridays if you happen to have Fridays free, and take what we call the 4-pack journalism essentials class, then you don't have to come at night. But everything else is done with the other students.
And this is highly personal, but I mean, based on my own preferences, but I must say that although we don't have as many options, just, you know, as a matter of fact, and as far as the classes that we take, I've never not gotten my first choice. So that's, I mean, and that might just be me, but I'm just saying.
It also helps you streamline your direction. You know,
Yeah.
if you look at your schedule and you look at the classes that you have, it's almost easier to be like, this is what I definitely need to take.
You know when you can't come, so.
So you can,
Just
yeah,
makes
I'll
choices.
just print out the whole thing and just cross out the ones I can't take.
How is the peer interaction? Like, is there competitive or is there a lot of camaraderie? Like, this is very nice, and, you know.
It is what you make of it. You know, if you're gonna be competitive and combative, then yeah, you're gonna meet people that are gonna fight you back. You know what I mean? But that's how it is in
Media is very competitive.
exactly. That's how it is in
Outside is
news.
very
But like Lisa said, we took writing and reporting in the summer together. There was a lot of help. There was a lot of people. There was a lot of source sharing. There was a lot of, you know, you're stuck here. Maybe if you took it here, or I went to the like. I remember somebody just out of the blue that I didn't really talk to in class just shot me an email and was like, oh, you were talking about covering your story like this. I saw this, maybe it'll help. Yeah. So, I mean,
I think when
I
you
can
get
see that.
any, like, a group of people together in any situation, you're gonna have different personalities and, you know. But at the end of the day, I think it's a very supportive environment, and you're really, especially as part-time students, you're not on top of each other all the time. I think for my RW1 experience, all of the people in that class are people I consider, for the most part, everyone in that class has been my friend since that. I mean, I've stayed in touch with
It's a
them.
journey, right?
I know them well. You're with them all the time. But after that, you know, you're thrown into classes with full-time students, and you're usually outnumbered, and you know, you have the opportunities to bond with those people too. But I think I didn't connect with people as closely as I did in that first reporting
Do they
experience.
put down on part-time?
Most of them don't.
Oh, no, not at all. Is that what it sounds like? Oh, no, I feel
it's just
bad.
you're constantly together.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if we wanted to hang out, it's an effort. You know,
Right.
not only do you have life and school and job, you have to be like, oh, all right, let's try to do a dinner sometime in between.
Yeah.
But I came from law school where, you know, if you had a statute, you had the book. So it's not like that here. It's definitely not like that. And I think as a part-timer, you have experience in doing something else. So, you know, stealing the story from Megan isn't my priority. Like getting through J school and keeping my job, that's my priority. So it's slightly different.
And I think we all bonded and helped each other because we were all stuck.
Yeah.
We all
I
knew
won't
we
say
had a
that.
certain amount of time, and you really are just trying to do the best you can with the time you have or don't have. So we really were helpful with each other. And when you're in, I guess, classes in the fall, unless you tell them, most people don't even realize you're part-time.
Yeah.
It's just you may have to speak up a little more when it comes to assignments, because sometimes it's like, in terms of time, you really can only focus in on the project on the weekend. If they're pushing for something else, you've got to remind them, hey, we need to sort of reorganize this because you've got to keep in mind this small group here.
I have a question. So in some of the materials, it's recommended that in addition to class time, you be prepared to have really like a full other day during the week off. Did you guys ever do that, or were you able to manage still working Monday to Friday and just?
Except for maybe the day I took off when I was in the reporting class because I was just really nervous about the story. I just kept going. I didn't have a summer. I was what we were in class Memorial Day weekend. So everyone I knew was going to a barbecue. I was coming to this building.
And it was better than the barbecue.
Jeremy changed this year, that's what he said.
What?
I think we started the day after Memorial Day.
Yeah.
For the class, so we would have our
Okay.
barbecue and.
No, we were
During
here.
the fall and spring, were you able to manage just with having evenings and weekends?
Sometimes I would take a day off if it just got to be too much, but for the most part, I didn't.
Okay.
So I would always just save the days. You never know. You never know.
For me in the summer, just for the reporting class, which was extremely extra demanding, as I mentioned before, I had an unusual situation where my employer was very understanding from the get-go, and they let me I just basically took every Wednesday off all summer and was paid at 80%. So if there's any way you can finagle that, it was extremely helpful to me. But it's not a requirement. I was the only person, I think, in my class who did that.
We actually, I'm lucky at my job, we have summer Fridays.
Oh, perfect.
So I can get there early and maybe or something.
Yeah, that's perfect. That'll be a big help to you, I
I mean,
think.
you'll find a way to juggle. Like
Yeah.
for me, it
Yeah.
was My laundry didn't get done as often. I had piles of laundry when I had time to do it. You eat out a lot more.
Yes.
You just don't have time to cook or go grocery shopping. You don't see your friends as much, so maybe you're shooting someone an email, but they all understand, and it's just, if you don't, I love you when I'm done. And so,
You'll also find like a schedule that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
For us, our deadline was Fridays at 5 p.m. So I always, and we were here for Saturday, so Sunday was my day off. I didn't do anything J school. And then Monday I sent out all my emails and initialized that contact. Then by Wednesday I would plan out everything, and Thursday it was knock it out. So I mean, that might not work for everybody, but that was my routine every week, and it ended up working.
I can't speak for everybody, but I found that after the summer, that initial summer, it got much more manageable. I don't know about you guys,
Yeah.
but after the sort of boot camp, which was awesome and necessary, and I think really taught me so much in a short period of time. Once you move on to the following semesters, it's a lot less chaotic.
Yeah, that boot camp is really just kind of learn from your own experiences, and then a professor sits down and explains what you should have done or what you could have done or what you could have done differently. So there's a lot of chaos and there's a lot of spontaneity that goes into that first class, and then every other class is a little bit more focused. It's a little bit more, there's one overlying theme, whereas in the boot camp it's just to learn how to write and work under pressure and meet deadlines and that kind of thing. So you need to be in that chaotic environment.
This question's for Lisa again. How do you find balancing the documentary project with part-time students?
some days I don't do such a great job. Because for me, I guess our class, we're the first group of part-timers in the doc programs. I guess they'll learn from our experiences. And going into it, I wish I had more reporting and writing experience before I submitted a topic for my master's project. That mine ended up not getting selected, and it's just, I think it's 16 people. Some topics got selected, so you ended up pairing off with someone who did, and it's working out, but for me, it's still going in to do the additional research. I wish I had a chance to develop more of my story and really find stronger characters and to kind of go from there. So, but then I love what I'm doing, and it's just I'll figure it out as I go along, and the great thing is I have a partner with me, which is I think a little easier when it comes to doing a master's project. I think everyone else will pretty much be doing it solo. So already I've got like 50% of the work down, so it works out that way.
Do you find yourself having to work with a part-time student, or?
Actually, it's a full-time student.
Okay.
And so far, so good. I mean, we get along really well. I mean, for her, she's also finishing up. She's looking for a job. And it's like in some ways our lives are pretty similar, where you're sort of finding yourself trying to squeeze in the time to do this particular project. Like she'll be here an extra semester, and it works out great if you're a part-timer because I'm still going to graduate in 2 years. Because while she's taking that extra semester, this summer is actually normally when every part-timer is doing their master's project anyway. So I'm not going to see a change in how long I'm at the school.
So did you used to, I think I saw your last presentation, were you into video before?
Still am.
So still, is that something that you were able to carry on?
Well, for this documentary that we're doing, we're going to shoot it and edit it ourselves. Since I last saw you, I'm much improved with the camera now. So I've just gone from really, really bad to just kind of bad. So I've gotten much better. And it's just practice and taking that thing out every week. And then luckily I'm working with someone, and she's a really good shooter, so I learn from her. And I'll just tell her flat out, I wish I were as good as you, but I'm not, so can you share some tricks and tips? And she has. And there's certain things I'm better at her at, so it works out.
I have a question for Megan. So you're a magazine concentration. How do you find navigating the industry itself with a magazine background with that focus?
What do you mean? Sorry.
Well, I know that magazines kind of fading and like the print, so are you looking more like the digital aspect now that you're graduating?
I was always more interested in the digital aspect, but I think the general consensus amongst all of the professors who work in magazines is that the good ones are not really going anywhere. They're just kind of adapting, and the ones that have, excellent iPad apps and a strong digital presence are continuing, and there's still the desire for content. It's just sort of changing form. So, I mean, I'm actually in the middle of interviewing for an internship at an online publication, news publication. That's not really magazine style, but I think that I wouldn't let that deter you in any way. If I don't know if it is, but the idea that the print, is fading. I think that all of the good ones and the ones that I imagine that you'd want to work for are still going to be going strong, and they all have a strong web presence. So I hope that was an okay answer. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good question. Has anybody on the panel done international study in different countries at all?
I worked in a different country doing something similar to journalism, but I didn't study there now.
Okay. And any of you developed second languages?
English is my second language.
Oh, what's your original?
Tamil.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tamil from Sri Lanka.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But I don't know where your question is going.
Well, no.
but go ahead.
No. I mean, I was just interested in if you had done international study, and
No.
I know a second language can be very pivotal.
It can.
In this industry, so that's why I was just curious. If
Yeah.
you had done.
Right now I'm doing an international newsroom class,
Okay.
and a lot of people have traveled to places that they're, it's not their language or their culture or anything that they're familiar with, and it's amazing how you see them kind of adapt to it. I went to Africa. I'm not African, and I went just because I was curious, and I was a legal person there. So I kind of didn't look at it from the lens of a communication person. But now I think about it in retrospect, and all the things that I could have done from what I'm learning here would have enhanced my work there, definitely. But even like the major part of the curriculum now is how do you write an international story by not going international. And that's fascinating. So that's...
Work for CNN, so imagine you do a lot of international news.
Sure. We're aware of it and we cover it, but we have people that work in those areas. So me from New York, I'm not going to fly out to Syria to cover something when we already have people there. Do you know what I mean? So it is a different perspective, but it's also interesting to see the change of the climate and how it's going to be very much, a lot of people staying here, so you don't have to put yourself into a situation like that. It's very outside the box thinking, but it's kind of amazing.
Sometimes it's just really luck. Vladimir Duthier, who was a part-time student
I was
here.
just going to mention
Yeah.
him.
Vlad ended up working with CNN. He was interning there.
He was in,
and
yeah.
then the earthquake happened in Haiti, and he speaks, Haitian, Creole, and he went down there with Anderson.
That's a really great story. He used to work with Christiane Amanpour, and in a very casual conversation, just dropped, my father or his mother, whoever it is Haitian, and I grew up speaking Creole, and that was it. There was no other conversation after that. And when the earthquake happened, she casually mentioned to Anderson Cooper, oh, I actually met somebody in the building that speaks Creole. So he took full advantage of being there and did stand-ups and got in front of the camera, ran around, found his own stories, and he moved to Lagos. Maybe right after he graduated, I don't really know, but he does a lot of work in our London bureau.
He had no journalism experience.
Yeah,
No, he was in finance
for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So he works in Nigeria now?
He's the head of the bureau there, but he travels to several different stories. I think he was one of the people selected to go to North Korea recently.
I actually met him at an information session before I applied here and reached out to him because he was very friendly and helpful, and I stayed in touch with him, and he gave a little, he spoke to the admissions people here, just like giving a little recommendation for me, and he's awesome. So if you want,
Nice, right?
yeah, I'm sure he would love to talk to you if you wanted to talk to him.
He continues to send me go talk to this person. Have you talked to that person? Why haven't you talked to that person? You know what I mean? So that was just one of those fluke things. I think Elena told me about him, and was just like, shoot him an email and see if he'll talk to you. And yeah, oh yeah.
Do all of you live in the city? And are there any part-timers that live out of the city that commute between their job and then to school? Like quite a distance, or what's the longest distance that you might know of?
I think that there was someone who was in the Wednesday reporting class, and I believe she lived in New Jersey. And I think she worked in Jersey too, and she would just come in here for that. And I think it was when when she was assigned her beat area, she got some area near her home. But you can probably work that out. I'm not sure what the professor
Okay, because my where I work is it's a university in New Jersey, and it's an hour away. So I'm kind of trying to figure out how I can, you know, so I love my job and they're going to support me 100% in this. Being able to take the train to commute from work to school.
When do you get out? When do you get out for the day?
Luckily, my job, I'm flexible. So normal on a day-to-day basis, I'm 9 to 5. But I have the ability in my job to change my hours.
So you could do that.
Yeah, I would work easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you live in Jersey too?
No, actually, I live by Philadelphia, so I commute to Princeton, back to Philly.
Kudos to you. We were from Philadelphia one year. It was really brutal.
Did you really?
Yeah, we did. And we had them. We'd had one come in Albany. I was excited about that because I wanted someone to be covering Albany. He did, and he had a kid. I really like a child that was born during the program. And we had one person who was commuting from Washington D.C. And it really stopped working at a certain point, and he had to move here, but he did it for a while, and that was brutal too.
Can I just make a comment, because my son goes to school near Philadelphia, we go there every week, and the train is so fast, I find it so easy when you get to the station. It's really, like we go every week also. I don't find that, you know, and you can use the time to study or do something.
Right.
I just don't find that.
Right, yeah, what I do is I drive to Princeton and then I take the train to here. Normally, I normally take the train from Philly to Princeton, I normally drive, but if you, the train would be a
It
bit
takes some
much.
time to
Can I ask, sorry, if you work, it's because you work for CNN, have you been able to like double dip at all in your, I work for PBS right now, and I have this grand vision that I'm gonna be like pitching my boss and pitching my professor, and like the stars are gonna align, and
The stars don't always align.
yeah.
But yeah, it definitely opens the door to a whole lot more people. I don't know how the database is with you guys, but we could reach anybody, anywhere, that's anybody that works for CNN. So it's really.
Oh, sorry, I think you're misunderstanding. I mean more like the work you're actually doing here to getting it published. Like,
Oh.
like that's what I mean. Sorry. So for example, like if you're working on a story, pitch it to your professor, then pitch it to your boss, and have you had that experience? I had this.
Well, I
experience,
mean,
that's gonna happen.
broadcast is a little different. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing in class don't really apply to what I do at work.
Okay.
But it has opened the door for me to piggyback with other people. Like, oh, I think it's interesting what you're doing. Can I come with you? I'm a student. Anytime you say you're a student, people are just like, all right, like you're not going to be a problem. But I guess in that sense, I've been able to double dip. And a lot of the people that from work, I've used them for profile subjects or assignments, which kind of helped because I was able to work and do school at the same time in the name of doing both, and nobody had a problem with it. So that was really advantageous. Nothing really changed with the work that I was already doing at work. And in school, I tried to do things, like I used school as like an experimental thing where I wasn't just told to do things, I could try things. And that, I don't know if this is answering your question, but when I did try things at school and they ended up working, I definitely took that to my boss or to an anchor and was like, hey, I had this great idea, I tried it, worked in school, maybe we can work on something together. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You had a question.
So if you were sitting in this side of the table now, is there one thing that you would go, man, I wish I knew that? Like going into this, not, reporting is hard, or you have to balance your life.
I didn't know. I mean, I got lucky because I did this anyway, but definitely take a class with Richard Waltz. He's the best. He's amazing. But also, I think a lot of it is just learning as you go, but try as hard as you can to plan well for your days, because once you miss an opportunity to get something or report on something, it's behind you. There's nothing you can do. And I think time management is the most important thing that you can really, and really if you're trying to decide between, you know, leaving your comfortable apartment and running out and covering something that might not even work and it's freezing, and just do it anyway. Because there were so many times that I feel like I probably could have pushed myself further in my reporting when I didn't, because I was exhausted, which I think happens to everybody, and you're not going to do it 100% of the time, but take full advantage of your time here because it goes by very quickly.
I totally second that. I've not done things because I've wanted to sleep an extra hour or an extra half hour, and it's so not worth it in the end, because I mean, you're going to be tired anyway, so you might as well get something out of that. The other thing that I remember people saying it a lot, but it didn't really sink in until I got here. They have so many people come in from the industry, and you can walk right up to them and start talking to them, and that's incredible. And people that you wouldn't even think. Recently, I've been working in a class with Dean Call about Syria, and we're analyzing how American outlets covered it versus, you know, international outlets and then citizen journalists. And that's not something I'm interested in. I mean, obviously, I'm aware of this story, but I'm not sitting there like analyzing each YouTube clip to verify if it's real, if it's up to date, and that kind of stuff. And they've brought in just people that were on the ground in Syria, people that monitored it from here using Twitter, and like photojournalists that, you know, have actual photo evidence and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, this topic that I wouldn't have thought twice about became something incredible. And I think I would never go to Syria. I would never be like, oh, that's a great story, let me go. Like, I don't have enough courage to do that. But to hear other people talk about it kind of gives you like an ounce of courage to maybe go to Iraq or something like that. So that, I heard about it a lot, but once I got here, it shocked me how many people were willing to come and speak here.
Can I just add one more thing? Sorry, I don't want to butt in on you, but this is something that really I wish I had figured out for myself when I started, which is if you're planning to change careers, which I think a lot of part-time students are, and you know exactly the kind of things that you want to do when you change your career, start doing it as closely as you can in every class that you take. Because when you go to that career expo and you have no journalism experience, all you're going to have is career journalism experience. All you're going to have is your clips that you did here, and the ones that are going to be most interested in you. And if you have a dream company, write as if you're writing, or do things as if you're doing things for them, because they'll look at it and be like, this is exactly the stuff that we do. This is perfect. And I had that happen with one company, and I also realized that I missed an opportunity maybe to do that for another company that I really wanted to work with, but I had nothing relevant for them. So it's another hurdle to get through to them. So try to figure out what you really want to do early and work towards that, because people will be impressed that you have relevant stuff for them.
I would say don't beat yourself up about the mistakes. You're going to make them, you're going to fail, you're going to feel horrible, but don't spend so much time beating yourself up that you don't pick yourself back up and go on to the next thing. You're going to find with stories, no matter how well you plan, something will fall through. Just in your mind as you're doing plan A, let Hannah have a plan B or a plan C in the background, because that's probably going to, in the end, be your plan A. And I guess try to have some fun. Like, you take it seriously, it is important, but on a certain level it's not. And what I appreciated about being a part-timer and also having a job is sometimes the J-School problems made the work problems really easy, and sometimes the work problems make J-School a breeze. Just try to keep it in perspective, and try to keep in touch with your friends, at least for the first couple of months, because while you're doing the digital media training, and you have to do assignments, you're going to call your friends to say, hey, I have to do this photo essay, let me come to your house and shoot this. So make all the goodwill with them, because you'll probably need them like the first 5 years.
You're going to be taking advantage of friends and family.
Yes. Yes.
That's your plan C always. If plan A doesn't work, be like, Mom, I had a professor tell me if all of your stories fall through, call up your mom and ask her to tell you a secret about her life. And I was like,
what is it?
I mean, that can open a door to a lot of things, but I got some really great stories from my mom that I actually put, like, I did profiles, and it was, I mean, it worked. I got good grades in
And if
class.
all else fails, I think someone did a photo essay on his dog? Like something just fell through and it worked. The pictures were great.
Because the English is not your first language, but it seems perfect. But did you have trouble writing the essays, and how did you go?
Before I came here, I have my own voice, and I write the way that I speak. So there's a lot of blah blah blah, and there's a lot of yada yada and stuff like that. But I learned how to streamline that. My first assignment that I wrote here was written in that voice, and she taught me how to take a red Sharpie and just cross it all out. And when you do that, you have all the work right there. You just have to learn how to like write it properly. The thing that I struggle with most is the readings that people assign for classes. There's a lot of words in there that when you Google it, the definitions, you have to Google the definitions. So that's a little tough. But I've learned to start doing that with classmates or with colleagues at work, and a lot of people just make sense out of things. So I started using these big words out of nowhere that I'm just like, I know exactly what that means. But it's a struggle. There's tutors here. I don't know if it's within the university. I've never had to use one, but I know other students use tutors to help them. And I mean, honestly, just sitting down with one of your professors and being like, this is what I'm trying to say. How do I break it down over a language barrier?
Do you understand Portuguese?
I do not. Sorry.
One thing I wanted to mention about the Career Expo, because it's come up, here's a really good perk about the part-time program is that, for example, Lisa, who's not going to be participating fully in the Career Expo until her graduating spring, volunteered as a part-timer to help us out with some of the logistics and the handing out of things, and in doing so was able to get a little taste of the Career Expo. In fact, we allow these volunteers to spend the last 2 hours during the walk-up period meeting recruiters, and even if they're not looking for a job right away, it's a wonderful way to just sort of get a sense of what it's like there and how to interview and how not to interview, and just, you know, really understanding this really unique experience of being in a room with over 130 recruiters and, you know, promoting yourself. So you sort of get to experience it twice in that way.
And what I did is they give you a book, it's probably about 100 pages when you print it, and it's telling you the company, the sort of juicy inside stuff you really want to know, some background on each particular recruiter. So I read through that, I said, okay, I'm going to figure out 4 people I want to meet. I think I met 3 out of the 4, and I just started emailing them after the fact. So it was just starting a dialogue now, and we'll see where it goes next year.
Right, we do have a lot of return recruiters who come. Well, I want to thank the panelists, and